The stagecoach lurched to a halt outside the dusty depot in Silver Peak, Nevada, and Olivia Ashford knew that the moment she stepped down, her carefully constructed lie would begin to unravel like cheap thread. The summer heat of 1882 pressed down on everything with merciless intensity, turning the air itself into something thick and hard to breathe. She smoothed her traveling dress with trembling hands, her heart hammering against her ribs as she peered through the window at the man waiting on the wooden platform, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the relentless sun. Quinton Fletcher stood with his hat in his hands, dark hair catching the light as he scanned each passenger who descended. Olivia had memorized every line of his face from the single photograph he had sent her, but seeing him in person made her breath catch in her throat for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. He was taller than she had imagined, with strong features weathered by the Nevada sun and eyes that seemed to hold both kindness and determination in equal measure. At 28, he had built a life for himself out here in the unforgiving territory, and he had written to her with such honest longing for companionship that her guilt had twisted deeper with every letter. She was not 27 years old, as she had claimed in her correspondence. She was 37, and every one of those extra 10 years felt like stones in her pockets as she finally stepped down from the stagecoach into the afternoon heat. Quinton's eyes found hers immediately, and something shifted in his expression, a flicker of surprise that he quickly schooled into a welcoming smile. He crossed the distance between them with long strides, and Olivia forced herself to stand straight, to meet his gaze even as shame burned in her chest. "Miss Ashford." His voice was deeper than she had expected, warm like honey despite the uncertainty she could detect beneath it. "Mr. Fletcher." Her own voice came out steadier than she felt. "Yes, it is I." He studied her face for a long moment, and Olivia watched the calculations happening behind his eyes. She had sent him a photograph too, but it had been taken nearly 15 years ago, before life had etched fine lines around her eyes and mouth, before her auburn hair had begun to show the first threads of silver at her temples. She had told herself it was not quite lying, that the woman in that photograph was still her, just a younger version. But standing here now under his searching gaze, the truth of her deception felt like a physical weight. "Welcome to Silver Peak," he said finally, and the gentleness in his tone nearly broke her. He offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it, feeling the solid strength of him beneath the fabric of his shirt. "The wagon is just over here. I imagine you are tired from the journey." It was long, she admitted, allowing him to guide her toward a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 patient horses. Her trunk was already being unloaded from the stagecoach, and Quinton moved to collect it with an ease that spoke of physical labor and hard-won strength. The town of Silver Peak sprawled around them, a collection of wooden buildings baking under the Nevada sun. The silver mines that had given the town its name dotted the surrounding hills, and Olivia could see the dust rising from the mining operations even from here. It was rougher than Boston, where she had spent most of her life, but there was a certain honest beauty to it that she had not expected. Quinton loaded her trunk into the wagon bed and then helped her up onto the seat, his hands careful and respectful as they steadied her. When he climbed up beside her and took the reins, she could smell the clean scent of soap and sunshine on him, mixed with leather and something else that was purely him. They rode in silence for a few minutes, the horses moving at a steady pace down the main street. Olivia watched the town pass by, noting the general store, the saloon, the small church with its whitewashed boards, the handful of other businesses that seemed to be thriving despite the harsh conditions. People called out greetings to Quinton as they passed, and he nodded back with the easy familiarity of someone who belonged here. "I should confess something," Quinton said suddenly, and Olivia's heart dropped into her stomach. Had he already decided to send her back? "I am not much for fancy words or pretty speeches. What I wrote in those letters took me considerable time and effort, and I had help from my friend Thomas, who has more education than I do. I wanted you to know that before we go any further." The relief that washed through Olivia was so intense it made her dizzy. "I appreciated every word," she said honestly. "They meant a great deal to me." "I meant what I said, though," he continued, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Every word of it. I have been alone out here for a long time, building my ranch, trying to make something of myself. And I reached a point where I realized that none of it meant much without someone to share it with." Guilt twisted in Olivia's chest like a knife. "Mr. Fletcher, I need to tell you something as well. Quinton," he said, glancing at her with a small smile. "If we are going to be married, you should call me Quinton." "Quinton," she repeated, the name feeling strange and intimate on her tongue. "I have not been entirely truthful with you." His hands tightened on the reins, but his expression remained calm. "About what? My age?" The words came out in a rush, propelled by the weight of her conscience. "I told you I was 27, but that was a lie. I am 37 years old, Quinton, 10 years older than I claimed to be." The wagon slowed as Quinton pulled the horses to a stop on the side of the road. Olivia could not bring herself to look at him, could not bear to see the disappointment or anger that must surely be written across his face. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant sound of mining operations and the buzzing of insects in the desert heat. "Look at me," Quinton said softly, and when she finally turned to face him, she was stunned to find not anger but something that looked almost like relief in his eyes. "Why did you lie?" Olivia took a shaky breath. "Because I was afraid. I have been alone for so long, and the opportunities for a woman my age are so limited. I thought that if you knew the truth, you would not want me. And I wanted so desperately to have a chance at a new life, at companionship and purpose. It was wrong of me, and I understand if you want to send me back on the next stage coach." Quinton was quiet for a long moment, his gaze searching her face with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his features, transforming his entire countenance. "You were worth the wait either way, Olivia. 10 years younger or 10 years older, it does not change what I saw in your letters. It does not change the intelligence and kindness and strength that came through in every word you wrote." "But I lied to you," she whispered, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "You did," he acknowledged. "And I appreciate that you told me the truth now before we went any further. That takes courage." He reached out and gently took her hand in his calloused palm warm against her skin. "I am not looking for perfection, Olivia. I am looking for partnership. Someone who will stand beside me and build a life with me. Someone who understands that out here, what matters is not how old you are or where you came from, but what you are willing to work for." Tears prickled at the corners of Olivia's eyes and she blinked them back fiercely. "I am willing to work," she said. "I am willing to try. Then that is enough for me." Quinton squeezed her hand gently before releasing it and taking up the reins again. "Now, let me show you the ranch. It is not much yet, but it is home." They drove on, leaving the town behind as they headed out into the open territory. The land around them was stark and beautiful, all sagebrush and rocky outcroppings beneath an endless sky. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow despite the summer heat. Olivia found herself relaxing incrementally as Quinton pointed out various landmarks, telling her stories about the land and the people who lived on it. The ranch appeared gradually, first as a fence line, and then as a cluster of buildings nestled in a small valley. The main house was modest but well built, with a wide porch that offered shade from the sun. There was a barn, a stable, a chicken coop, and several other outbuildings that spoke of a working operation. Cattle grazed in the distance, their forms dark against the golden grass. "It is beautiful," Olivia said, and she meant it. There was something honest and solid about the place, something that spoke of hard work and determination. "It is yours now, too," Quinton said as he brought the wagon to a stop in front of the house. "Or it will be once we are married. I thought we might wait a week or so, give you time to settle in and be sure this is what you want. I have a room prepared for you in the house, and I will sleep in the barn until the wedding." The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched Olivia deeply. "That is very considerate of you." "I want you to be comfortable," Quinton said simply. He jumped down from the wagon and came around to help her down, his hands steady at her waist. For a moment they stood close together, and Olivia caught her breath at the warmth in his eyes. Then he stepped back, giving her space, and moved to collect her trunk. The inside of the house was clean and surprisingly well appointed. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall and a solid wooden table with chairs in the center. There were 2 bedrooms off the main room, and Quinton showed her to the larger of the 2, which had clearly been prepared with care. Fresh linens covered the bed, and wildflowers had been placed in a jar on the simple dresser. "I will give you some time to freshen up," Quinton said, setting her trunk down at the foot of the bed. "When you are ready, come out and I will show you around the property properly." Olivia nodded, and when he left, closing the door gently behind him, she sank down onto the bed and allowed herself a moment to simply breathe. She had expected rejection, had steeled herself for it, and instead she had found acceptance. The relief was almost overwhelming, but beneath it ran a current of something else, something warmer and more complicated. She washed her face and hands in the basin of water that had been left for her, changed from her traveling dress into something more practical, and took a few minutes to unpack the essentials from her trunk. Then, squaring her shoulders, she went out to find Quinton. He was waiting on the porch, leaning against the railing and looking out over his land with an expression of quiet satisfaction. When he heard her step, he turned and smiled, and Olivia felt her heart do a strange little flip in her chest. "Ready for the tour?" he asked, and she nodded. They spent the rest of the afternoon walking the property, with Quinton explaining his operation and his plans for the future. He had about 200 head of cattle, he told her, and was working to build up the herd. The land was good for grazing despite the harshness of the climate, and he had water rights to a creek that ran through the property. He spoke with passion about his work, and Olivia found herself drawn into his vision, asking questions and offering observations that seemed to please him. "You understand more than I expected," he said at one point, genuine surprise in his voice. "My father was a farmer in Massachusetts," Olivia explained. "Before he died, he taught me about animal husbandry and land management. It is different here, of course, but the principles are the same." "That will be helpful," Quinton said. "Running a ranch is hard work, and I could use a partner who understands it." As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, they made their way back to the house. Quinton showed Olivia the kitchen garden behind the house, which had been somewhat neglected but still produced tomatoes, beans, and squash. "I am not much of a gardener," he admitted ruefully. "I can keep things alive, but that is about it." "I can help with that," Olivia said, already mentally cataloging what needed to be done. "A good garden can make a real difference in what we can put on the table." That evening, Quinton cooked dinner for them both, a simple meal of beans and cornbread with some preserved meat. They ate at the table in the main room, and conversation flowed more easily than Olivia had dared to hope. Quinton asked about her life in Boston, and she found herself telling him about her years working as a seamstress, about the small apartment she had shared with two other women, about the loneliness that had driven her to answer his advertisement for a bride. "What about you?" she asked. "How did you end up here in Nevada?" Quinton leaned back in his chair, his expression growing distant. "I came west after the war," he said. "The Civil War. I was young, barely 18 when I enlisted, and what I saw changed me. When it was over, I could not go back to the farm in Ohio where I grew up. Everything felt too small, too confining. So I drifted west, worked on cattle drives, learned the trade. Eventually, I saved enough to buy this land and start my own operation." "You have built something impressive," Olivia said softly. "I have built the foundation," Quinton corrected. "But a foundation is not a home. Not really. I realized that a few years ago when I was laid up with a broken leg and there was no one to help me, no one to care whether I lived or died. That is when I knew I needed to find someone to share this with." The vulnerability in his words touched something deep in Olivia's chest. "I understand that feeling," she said. "The loneliness of being invisible, of not mattering to anyone." Their eyes met across the table, and in that moment, Olivia felt a connection form between them, fragile but real. It was not love, not yet, but it was the beginning of something that could grow into love given time and care. True to his word, Quinton retired to the barn after dinner, leaving Olivia alone in the house. She lay in the comfortable bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the Nevada night, and thought about the strange turn her life had taken. A week ago, she had been preparing to board the stagecoach in Boston, her stomach tied in knots over her deception. Now she was here, and against all odds, she had found acceptance and the promise of a future. The next few days fell into a gentle rhythm. Olivia rose early and worked on the house and garden, cleaning and organizing and bringing her own touch to the space. Quinton went about his ranch work but made time to eat meals with her and to continue showing her the operation. They talked easily, sharing stories and opinions, discovering common ground and learning to navigate their differences. On the third day, Quinton took Olivia into town to introduce her to some of the local residents. Silver Peak was a small community, and Olivia could feel the curious eyes on her as they walked down the main street. Quinton seemed oblivious to the attention, or perhaps just accustomed to it, and he greeted everyone with the same easy warmth. They stopped at the general store, where Quinton introduced Olivia to the proprietor, a shrewd-eyed woman named Martha Hughes who looked to be in her 50s. "So you are the mail-order bride everyone has been talking about," Martha said, studying Olivia with frank curiosity. "Quinton has been like a boy at Christmas waiting for you to arrive." "Martha," Quinton said, a flush creeping up his neck, but there was affection in his tone. "It is true," Martha insisted, turning back to Olivia. "He must have come into town a dozen times in the past month, checking for letters from you, making sure everything was ready. It is good to see him so happy." Olivia felt warmth spread through her chest at the words. "It is good to be here," she said honestly. They purchased supplies, including fabric that Olivia could use to make new curtains for the house and some seeds for the garden. Martha proved to be a font of information about the town and its residents, and Olivia found herself liking the older woman despite her directness. Their next stop was the small church, where they met Reverend Thomas Blackwell and his wife, Sarah. The Reverend was a kind-faced man in his 40s with graying hair and gentle eyes. "Quinton has told me you would like to be married next week," Reverend Blackwell said. "Would Saturday suit you both?" Olivia looked at Quinton, who met her gaze with a question in his eyes. She realized he was giving her the choice, letting her set the pace. Saturday would be perfect, she said. Wonderful, Sarah Blackwell said, clasping her hands together. We will make sure the church is ready, and I will spread the word. The whole town will want to celebrate with you. As they left the church, Quinton touched Olivia's elbow gently. Are you sure about Saturday? We can wait longer if you need more time. I am sure, Olivia said, and she was surprised to realize it was true. The fear and uncertainty that had plagued her on the journey west had begun to fade, replaced by a growing sense of rightness about this choice. The week passed quickly, filled with preparations and work. Olivia threw herself into making the house more comfortable, washing windows and beating rugs and cooking meals that made Quinton's eyes light up with pleasure. In the evenings, they sat on the porch together, watching the sun set over the mountains and talking about their hopes for the future. I want to expand the herd, Quinton said one evening. In a few years, I think we could double the number of cattle we run, and I have been thinking about getting some horses as well, breeding stock. There is a good market for quality horses in this territory. That sounds ambitious, Olivia said, rocking gently in the chair Quinton had brought out for her. It is, he acknowledged, but I think we can do it, together. The word together settled over Olivia like a warm blanket. She had been alone for so long, making decisions and facing challenges with no one to rely on but herself. The idea of partnership, of shared burdens and shared triumphs, was almost intoxicating. What about you? Quinton asked. What do you want for the future? Olivia considered the question carefully. I want to be useful, she said finally. I want to build something lasting, and I want to belong somewhere, to have a place that is truly home. You have that here, Quinton said softly, for as long as you want it. Saturday dawned clear and bright, with a hint of coolness in the morning air that promised relief from the summer heat. Olivia dressed in her best gown, a deep blue silk that she had made herself years ago and saved for special occasions. She arranged her hair carefully, leaving a few auburn curls to frame her face, and studied her reflection in the small mirror. She looked like herself, no longer hiding behind a decade-old photograph or a lie about her age. The woman staring back at her had lived 37 years, had known joy and sorrow, had made mistakes and learned from them. And today, that woman was getting married. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Miss Ashford, it was Sarah Blackwell's voice. I've come to help you get ready and to ride with you to the church. Olivia opened the door to find Sarah standing there with a bouquet of wildflowers and a warm smile. You look beautiful, Sarah said. Quinton is a lucky man. I think I am the lucky one, Olivia said, accepting the flowers with trembling hands. The church was fuller than Olivia had expected when they arrived. It seemed that half the town had turned out for the wedding, curious to see Quinton Fletcher's mail-order bride, and to celebrate with a man who was clearly well-liked in the community. Olivia felt a flutter of nerves as she walked down the aisle, but then she saw Quinton standing at the front of the church, and everything else faded away. He had cleaned up beautifully, wearing a dark suit that made his broad shoulders even more impressive, and his hair neatly combed. But it was the expression on his face that made Olivia's breath catch, a look of such open wonder and happiness that she felt tears prick at her eyes. The ceremony itself passed in a blur. Olivia heard herself speaking the vows, promising to love and honor and cherish, and she meant every word with a fervor that surprised her. When Quinton slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, his hands were steady and sure, and when the reverend pronounced them husband and wife, his kiss was gentle and full of promise. The townspeople gathered outside the church to congratulate them, and Olivia found herself swept up in a whirlwind of introductions and well-wishes. Martha Hughes had organized a small reception at the town hall, with food and drink, and even a fiddle player to provide music. Olivia danced with Quinton, his arms strong around her waist, and felt something shift and settle in her chest, a sense of finally being where she belonged. As the afternoon wore on and the celebration continued, Quinton leaned down to whisper in her ear, "Ready to go home, Mrs. Fletcher?" The name sent a thrill through Olivia. "Yes," she said, "I am ready." They said their goodbyes and climbed into the wagon, which someone had decorated with ribbons and tin cans. The ride back to the ranch was filled with comfortable silence, both of them tired but content. When they arrived, Quinton helped Olivia down from the wagon, and this time he did not immediately step away. Instead, he cradled her face in his hands and kissed her properly, deeply, until Olivia felt her knees go weak. "I have been wanting to do that all day," he murmured against her lips. "Then why did you wait?" Olivia asked, emboldened by the desire she could see in his eyes. "Because I wanted it to be right," Quinton said. "I wanted to bring you home first, to cross the threshold as my wife." He swept her up into his arms, carrying her into the house, and through to the bedroom they would now share. And there, in the fading light of their wedding day, they came together with a tenderness and passion that surprised them both. Quinton was patient and attentive, seeming to sense Olivia's nervousness and taking time to ease her fears. And Olivia, who had thought herself too old for such things, discovered that desire and love knew no age limit. Afterwards, they lay tangled together in the sheets, Quinton's arm around Olivia and her head resting on his chest. She could hear the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear, and she felt a peace she had never known before. "I love you," Quinton said into the darkness, and Olivia's breath caught. "You do," she whispered. "I do," he confirmed, his hand stroking gently through her hair. "I think I have been falling in love with you since you stepped off that stagecoach, maybe even before that from your letters. You are brave and kind and strong, and I thank God every day that you chose to come here to take a chance on me." Tears slipped down Olivia's cheeks, but they were tears of joy. "I love you too," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I did not think I would, not this quickly, but I do. You have given me so much more than I ever hoped for. We have given each other a future," Quinton said, "and I intend to spend every day of that future showing you how grateful I am." The next few months were a time of adjustment and growth. Olivia threw herself into life on the ranch, learning the rhythms and demands of the work. She took over the kitchen garden completely, expanding it and putting up preserves for the winter. She also began helping Quinton with the cattle, proving to have a natural way with the animals that impressed him. "You have a gift," he told her one afternoon as they worked together to treat a sick calf. "The cattle trust you." "Animals sense when someone cares about them," Olivia said, stroking the calf's head gently. "And I do care. This ranch, this life, it all matters to me now." As fall arrived and the heat began to ease, they settled into a comfortable partnership. Quinton consulted Olivia on decisions about the ranch, valuing her opinion and insight. Olivia, in turn, found confidence in her new role, no longer feeling like an imposter but rather like someone who truly belonged. They made trips into Silver Peak together, and Olivia began to form friendships with some of the other women in town. Martha Hughes became a particular ally, sharing recipes and gossip and practical advice about surviving the harsh Nevada winters. Sarah Blackwell invited Olivia to join the church's sewing circle, where Olivia's skills as a seamstress were put to good use making quilts for families in need. At night, in the privacy of their bedroom, Olivia and Quinton continued to discover each other. their physical relationship deepening along with their emotional connection. Quinton was an attentive lover, always making sure Olivia found pleasure in their union, and Olivia found herself opening up in ways she had never imagined possible. "I was so afraid," she confessed to him one night, lying in his arms. "When I was coming here, I was terrified that you would reject me once you learned the truth about my age." "I told you," Quinton said, kissing her forehead gently. "You were worth the wait either way. Your age does not define you, Olivia. Your character does. Your strength and kindness and the love you bring to everything you do." Winter came to Silver Peak with a vengeance, bringing snow and bitter cold that tested Olivia's resolve. But she proved equal to the challenge, working alongside Quinton to keep the cattle fed and the house warm. They spent long evenings by the fire, Quinton reading aloud from books while Olivia sewed or knitted, comfortable in their shared silence. It was during one of these quiet evenings in January that Olivia realized she had missed her monthly courses. At first, she told herself it was just the change in climate or the physical demands of ranch life. But as the weeks passed and her breasts grew tender and she found herself exhausted by midday, she could no longer deny the truth. She was pregnant. The realization filled her with a mixture of joy and terror. At 37, she was not young to be having a first child, and she knew the risks. But when she looked at Quinton, at the life they had built together, she felt a fierce determination to bring this child safely into the world. She told him one evening after dinner, unable to keep the secret any longer. "Quinton, I have something to tell you." He looked up from the harness he was mending, concern immediately creasing his brow. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am fine," Olivia assured him quickly. "Better than fine." "I am with child." For a moment, Quinton just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face, growing until it transformed his entire countenance. He crossed the room in 2 long strides and swept Olivia up in his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop. "We are going to have a baby," he said, setting her down gently and cupping her face in his hands. "A child, our child. Are you happy?" Olivia asked, even though she could clearly see that he was. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Quinton said, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "You have given me everything, Olivia. A home, a partnership, love, and now a family. I could not ask for more." "I am afraid," Olivia admitted. "I am not young, and childbirth is dangerous even for younger women." "We will face it together," Quinton said firmly. "And I will make sure you have the best care available. We will bring the doctor out from town regularly to check on you, and when your time comes, we will have help." True to his word, Quinton became fiercely protective of Olivia as her pregnancy progressed. He insisted she rest more and take on fewer physically demanding tasks. He brought the doctor, a gruff but competent man named Dr. Henry Morrison, out to the ranch once a month to examine Olivia and ensure all was progressing well. "You are healthy and strong," Dr. Morrison told Olivia during one of these visits. "Your age is a factor, yes, but you have been doing physical work all your life, and that will help. Just continue to take care of yourself and listen to your body." As spring arrived and the snow melted, revealing the land beneath, Olivia found herself blooming along with the wildflowers. Her belly swelled with the growing child, and despite her initial fears, she felt healthy and vital. Quinton seemed to find her even more beautiful pregnant, his hands constantly drawn to her rounded stomach, marveling at the life growing within. They prepared a nursery in the smaller bedroom, Quinton building a cradle with his own hands and Olivia sewing tiny clothes and blankets. Martha Hughes and the other women from town organized a gathering to celebrate the coming baby, bringing gifts and advice and stories that both reassured and terrified Olivia. The first one is always the hardest, Martha said with the authority of someone who had raised 5 children. But you are tough, Olivia. You will get through it. As summer arrived once more, nearly a year after Olivia had first come to Silver Peak, she found herself grateful for the timing. The heat was intense, but at least she would not be hugely pregnant through the worst of winter. The baby was due in early September, Dr. Morrison calculated, and Olivia found herself counting down the days with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. In late August, Olivia woke one morning to find Quinton already up and dressed, pacing the bedroom with an agitated expression. "What is wrong?" she asked, pushing herself into a sitting position with some difficulty. "I need to ride out to the north pasture," Quinton said. "Some of the cattle have gotten through a break in the fence, and I need to round them up and repair it." "But I do not want to leave you alone, not this close to your time." "I will be fine," Olivia assured him. "Sarah Blackwell said she would come by this morning to check on me. Go take care of the cattle." Quinton hesitated, clearly torn, but finally nodded. "I will be back as soon as I can. If anything happens, anything at all, send Sarah to fetch me." He kissed her thoroughly before leaving, and Olivia watched from the porch as he rode off toward the northern part of the ranch. True to her word, Sarah arrived about an hour later, bringing fresh bread and cheerful conversation. They were sitting at the kitchen table, sharing tea and talking about the upcoming birth, when Olivia felt the first contraction. It was not particularly painful, just a tightening across her belly, but she knew immediately what it meant. "Sarah," she said calmly, setting down her teacup. "I think the baby is coming." Sarah's eyes widened, but she quickly composed herself. "All right, let me help you to the bedroom, and then I will send my son to fetch the doctor and Quinton." The next several hours passed in a haze of increasing pain and effort. Dr. Morrison arrived first, his presence steady and reassuring as he examined Olivia and declared that everything was progressing normally. Quinton burst through the door about an hour later, his face pale and his eyes wild with worry. "Is she all right?" he demanded, and Dr. Morrison nodded. "She is doing well, but it will be several more hours yet. First babies take their time." Quinton insisted on staying in the room, holding Olivia's hand and wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. As the labor intensified and the pain became almost unbearable, Olivia clung to him, drawing strength from his presence. "You can do this," he murmured to her, his voice rough with emotion. "You are the strongest person I know, Olivia. You can do this." And she did. As the sun began to set on that September day in 1883, Olivia brought their child into the world with a final, wrenching push. The baby's cry filled the room, strong and healthy, and Dr. Morrison held up the infant with a smile. "You have a son," he announced, and Olivia collapsed back against the pillows, tears streaming down her face. Quinton stared at the baby in wonder as Dr. Morrison cleaned him and wrapped him in a blanket. Then the doctor placed the infant in Olivia's arms, and she looked down at the tiny, perfect face of her son. "He is beautiful," she whispered, touching one tiny fist with a trembling finger. "He is perfect," Quinton said, his own eyes wet with tears. "You are perfect, both of you." They named the baby Thomas, after Quinton's father, and he proved to be a healthy, vigorous child who filled the house with noise and energy. Olivia recovered well from the birth, aided by her fundamental good health and Quinton's devoted care. He took over many of the household tasks in those first few weeks, insisting that Olivia rest and focus on nursing the baby. "I did not realize how much work an infant is," he admitted one night as they both tried to soothe a fussy Thomas. "I thought cattle were demanding, but they have nothing on a baby." Olivia laughed, exhausted but happy. "Welcome to parenthood." As Thomas grew from an infant into a robust toddler, the ranch continued to thrive. Quinton expanded the herd as he had planned, and with Olivia's help, they began breeding horses as well. The extra income allowed them to make improvements to the house and buildings, and to hire a young man named Jack to help with the heavy labor. Olivia found that motherhood suited her, despite her age. She was patient and loving with Thomas, but also firm when necessary, and Quinton proved to be a devoted father. He spent hours with his son, teaching him about the ranch and the animals, carrying him on his shoulders as he made his rounds. "I never thought I could be this happy," Quinton told Olivia one evening as they watched Thomas play with a puppy near the porch. "Every day, I wake up grateful for you, for our son, for this life we have built." "I feel the same," Olivia said, leaning into his embrace. "I took such a risk coming here, lying about my age. I was so afraid, but you saw past all of that to the person I really am." "You were worth the wait either way," Quinton said, echoing the words he had spoken that first day when she confessed her deception. "And you will always be worth it, no matter how many years we have together." When Thomas was 2 years old, Olivia found herself pregnant again. This time, the news was less of a shock but no less joyful. At 39, she knew the risks were even greater, but Dr. Morrison remained optimistic. "You did it once," he said. "No reason to think you cannot do it again." The second pregnancy was harder than the first, with more fatigue and discomfort, but Olivia refused to let it slow her down too much. Quinton worried constantly, but Olivia reassured him with her strength and determination. Their daughter was born in the spring of 1885, a tiny, delicate thing with Olivia's auburn hair and Quinton's dark eyes. They named her Rose, and she became the apple of her father's eye from the moment he first held her. "I never knew I could love something so much," Quinton said, cradling his daughter with a tenderness that made Olivia's heart swell. "You have room in your heart for both of them," Olivia assured him, watching as Thomas toddled over to peer at his new sister with intense curiosity. The years that followed were full and rich. Thomas grew into a sturdy, adventurous boy who loved the ranch and the animals, always trailing after his father and asking endless questions. Rose was quieter and more thoughtful, content to spend hours in the garden with Olivia or playing with her dolls on the porch. The ranch continued to prosper, becoming one of the most successful operations in the area. Quinton and Olivia worked as true partners, making decisions together and supporting each other through challenges and triumphs. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, celebrated good years and endured lean ones, but through it all, their love for each other only deepened. Silver Peak grew and changed around them. The mines began to play out, and some families moved away, but new people arrived as well, drawn by the railroad that finally reached the area in 1887. The town acquired a proper school, which Thomas attended with enthusiasm, and Rose followed a few years later. Olivia became a respected figure in the community, known for her kindness and practical wisdom. She helped organize charitable efforts for families in need, taught sewing classes to young women, and served as a trusted advisor to several mail-order brides who followed in her footsteps. "Tell them the truth," she always counseled. "Whatever it is, be honest from the start. If the man is worth having, he will accept you as you are." Quinton became a leader in the Cattlemen's Association, advocating for fair practices and sustainable ranching methods. He was known as a man of integrity, someone whose word could be trusted, and who treated his employees and neighbors with respect. As the children grew older and more independent, Olivia and Quinton found time to focus on each other again. They took rides into the mountains, just the two of them, and spent long evenings on the porch talking and planning for the future. The passion between them had not faded with time, but had instead evolved into something deeper and more enduring. "You ever regret it?" Quinton asked her one evening as they watched the sun set over the mountains. "Coming here, marrying a stranger, leaving everything you knew behind." "Never," Olivia said without hesitation. "This is where I belong, with you, with our children on this land. I found myself here, Quinton. I found the person I was always meant to be." "You gave me everything," Quinton said, pulling her close. "A home, a family, a reason to build something lasting. I was just existing before you came, going through the motions, but you brought life and love and purpose to everything." When Thomas turned 18 in 1901, he announced his intention to attend agricultural college in California. Quinton was proud but concerned, and it was Olivia who encouraged him to let their son go. "He needs to make his own way," she said. "To learn and grow and discover who he is beyond being our son. He will come back, Quinton. This land is in his blood." And she was right. Thomas returned 2 years later with new knowledge and ideas, ready to help modernize the ranch and take on more responsibility. He had also brought home a wife, a smart, capable young woman named Elizabeth who fit seamlessly into the family. Rose, meanwhile, showed no interest in ranching but a deep love for learning. She became a teacher in the Silver Peak School, beloved by her students and respected by the community. At 21, she married a young lawyer who had recently opened a practice in town, and they built a house just on the edge of Silver Peak, close enough to visit the ranch frequently. As Olivia and Quinton entered their 50s, and then their 60s, they began to slow down, turning over more of the daily operations of the ranch to Thomas and his growing family. But they remained active and engaged, taking pleasure in their grandchildren and in the life they had built together. On a warm September evening in 1908, 26 years after Olivia had first arrived in Silver Peak, she and Quinton sat on the porch of their home, watching their grandchildren play in the yard. Thomas and Elizabeth's 3 children chased each other around while Rose's 2 daughters picked wildflowers near the garden. "Can you believe it has been 26 years?" Olivia asked, her hand finding Quinton's as naturally as breathing. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday," Quinton said, bringing her hand to his lips and kissing it gently. "And sometimes it feels like we have always been together, like there was never a time before you." "I still remember how terrified I was," Olivia said. "Standing on that platform, knowing I had lied to you, certain you would send me away. And I still remember thinking you were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen," Quinton said. "Not because of how you looked, though you took my breath away, but because of the courage it took to tell me the truth, to risk everything for honesty. You said I was worth the wait either way," Olivia reminded him, smiling at the memory. "And I meant it," Quinton said firmly. "Every word. You were worth the wait, worth every challenge, worth every moment of doubt or fear. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia Fletcher." "And you are mine," Olivia said, leaning against his shoulder as she had done countless times over the years. "My partner, my love, my home." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and gold, listening to the laughter of their grandchildren and the gentle sounds of the ranch settling in for the night. The land stretched out around them, the same harsh, beautiful Nevada landscape that had witnessed their wedding, the births of their children, and every joy and sorrow of their shared life. "I hope we have many more years together," Quinton said softly. "We will," Olivia assured him, though they both knew that time was precious and finite. "But however many we have, I will be grateful for every single one, because I found something here I never expected to find." "What was that?" Quinton asked. "Home," Olivia said simply. "Not just a place, but a feeling. a sense of belonging and purpose and love. You gave me that, Quinton. You saw past my lies and my fears to the person I really was, and you loved her anyway. I loved her from the moment she stepped off that stagecoach, Quinton said. And I will love her until my last breath and beyond. As darkness fell and the stars began to emerge in the vast Nevada sky, Olivia and Quinton remained on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms and in the warmth of a love that had been tested by truth and time and had emerged stronger for it. Around them, their children and grandchildren prepared for the evening, secure in the foundation that Olivia and Quinton had built through honesty, hard work, and unwavering devotion. The ranch that had started as one man's dream had become a family legacy, passed down through generations. The house that had once seemed too big and too empty for Quinton alone now overflowed with love and laughter. And the woman who had been so afraid of rejection for lying about her age had become the heart of it all, the steady center around which everything else revolved. In the years that followed, Olivia and Quinton continued to be active in their families' lives and in the Silver Peak community. They celebrated weddings and births, supported their children through challenges, and delighted in watching their grandchildren grow. As they aged, they faced the inevitable difficulties of growing older, but they faced them together, just as they had faced everything else. Quinton developed arthritis in his hands, making it difficult to do some of the tasks he had once performed with ease. Olivia's eyesight began to fail, forcing her to give up some of her more detailed sewing work. But they adapted, finding new ways to contribute and to support each other. "We make a good team," Quinton would say, and Olivia would smile and agree. When Quinton turned 70 in 1913, the family threw a large celebration at the ranch, with people coming from all over the county to honor the man who had helped build the community. Speeches were made praising his integrity and his contributions, but it was Olivia's quiet words, spoken in the privacy of their bedroom that night, that meant the most to him. "I am so proud of you," she said, helping him out of his Sunday suit. "Not because of what others say about you, but because of who you are when no one is watching. You are a good man, Quinton Fletcher, the best I have ever known." "I am only good because you made me better," Quinton said, cupping her face in his weathered hands. "You brought out the best in me, Olivia. You always have." They celebrated Olivia's 73rd birthday the following year, a quieter affair with just the family gathered around the table. Looking at her children and grandchildren, all healthy and happy and building their own lives, Olivia felt a profound sense of satisfaction. She had taken a risk all those years ago, boarding that stagecoach and coming west on a lie. But that risk had led to this, to a family and a legacy that would endure long after she was gone. As the years continued to pass, Olivia and Quinton spent more time simply enjoying each other's company, taking slow walks around the property, sitting on the porch watching the world go by, and sharing memories of their long life together. They talked about the early days when everything was uncertain and new, and they marveled at how far they had come. "You remember that first week?" Olivia asked one afternoon as they sat in the shade of the porch. "When you slept in the barn to give me time to adjust?" "I remember lying awake every night, wondering if you would decide I was not worth staying for," Quinton admitted. "Wondering if you would get back on that stagecoach and leave." "I never considered it," Olivia said. "Not once. From the moment you said I was worth the wait either way, I knew I had found something special. Someone special." "We were both taking a risk," Quinton said. "Me with a mail-order bride, you with a stranger in a strange land, but it was the best risk either of us ever took." In the spring of 1916, Quinton fell ill with pneumonia. Dr. Morrison, now elderly himself, did what he could, but it was clear that Quinton's body, worn down by decades of hard physical labor and the simple passage of time, was struggling to fight off the infection. Olivia barely left his bedside, holding his hand and talking to him, telling him stories of their life together and reminding him of all the good they had built. "You cannot leave me yet," she whispered to him one night when his breathing was particularly labored. "We have more years ahead of us, more grandchildren to meet, more sunsets to watch together." Quinton's eyes opened, and despite his illness, he managed a small smile. "As many as God grants us," he rasped. "But Olivia, if I do not make it through this, I need you to know something." "Do not talk like that," Olivia said, tears streaming down her face. "Listen to me," Quinton insisted, gathering his strength. "You made my life worth living. Every single day with you was a gift. I have no regrets, no wishes for things to have been different. You were perfect for me, exactly as you were, lies and all." "I love you," Olivia sobbed. "I love you so much." "And I love you," Quinton said. "Always have, always will, no matter what comes next." But Quinton was stronger than anyone gave him credit for, strengthened perhaps by his stubborn refusal to leave Olivia. Slowly, painfully, he fought his way back from the brink of death. It took months for him to fully recover, and he was never quite as strong as he had been before, but he survived. "You are not getting rid of me that easily," he told Olivia once he was well enough to joke about it. "I intend to be here to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary and beyond." And he was. In June of 1932, 50 years after their wedding in the little church in Silver Peak, Olivia and Quinton renewed their vows in front of their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Olivia was 87 years old, still sharp-minded despite her aged body. Quinton, at 87 as well, moved slowly but with determination, his hand steady as he once again placed a ring on Olivia's finger. 50 years, the Reverend, a young man who had not even been born when they first married, said with wonder. "What is the secret to such a long and happy marriage?" Quinton and Olivia looked at each other, a lifetime of love and understanding passing between them in that glance. Then Quinton smiled and said, "Honesty, hard work, and remembering that the person you love is worth any weight, any challenge, any difficulty. And finding someone who sees you for who you really are," Olivia added. "Not who you pretend to be, but your true self, and loving that person anyway." The celebration went on long into the evening, with music and dancing and stories shared by multiple generations. As the sun began to set, Olivia and Quinton slipped away from the crowd, making their way slowly back to the porch of the house they had shared for 50 years. "This is where it all began," Olivia said, looking out over the land that had become so familiar, so beloved. "Right here on this porch when you first brought me home. And this is where it continues," Quinton said, settling into his chair with a satisfied sigh. "For as long as we both shall live." They sat together in the fading light, their hands intertwined, their hearts beating in the same rhythm they had found so many years ago. Around them, their legacy lived and breathed in the form of children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of them shaped by the love and values that Olivia and Quinton had modeled. The ranch continued to thrive under Thomas's management, updated with modern techniques, but still grounded in the principles his parents had established. Rose's children had grown into teachers and lawyers and ranchers themselves, spreading out across Nevada, but always maintaining ties to Silver Peak and the family ranch. As darkness fell completely and the stars emerged in their ancient patterns, Olivia rested her head on Quinton's shoulder, just as she had done countless times over the past 50 years. She thought about the frightened woman who had stepped off that stagecoach in 1882, so terrified of rejection that she had lied about something as fundamental as her age. And she thought about the man who had looked past that lie to see the truth of who she was, who had declared her worth the wait either way. "Thank you," she whispered to Quinton in the darkness. "For what?" he asked, his voice soft and warm. "For everything," Olivia said. "For taking a chance on a mail-order bride, for accepting me despite my lies, for building this life with me, for 50 years of love and partnership and joy." "Thank you for coming," Quinton replied, "for having the courage to travel across the country to marry a stranger, for telling me the truth even when you were afraid, for staying and building this life with me. You are and always have been the best part of me, Olivia." They remained on the porch long after everyone else had gone to bed, unwilling to let go of this perfect moment. The night air was cool and sweet, carrying the scent of sage and wildflowers. In the distance, cattle lowed softly, and closer by, the horses shifted in their stalls. All the familiar sounds of the ranch they loved, the life they had built together. Olivia Fletcher, who had once been so afraid of being too old, too unwanted, too dishonest to deserve love, had instead found a love that transcended age and circumstance. She had found a partner who valued her for her true self, who had looked past a 10-year lie to see the woman beneath. And Quinton Fletcher, who had been so lonely in his successful but empty life, had found the companion and partner he needed, someone who brought warmth and love and purpose to everything. Together, they had created something lasting and beautiful, a legacy of honesty, hard work, and enduring love. The lie that had brought them together had been forgiven and forgotten long ago, replaced by a truth more powerful than any deception. The truth of two hearts that had found their perfect match against all odds. As the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance, Olivia and Quinton sat together on their porch, surrounded by the evidence of their love, secure in the knowledge that they had lived well and loved truly. And in the morning, when the sun rose over the Nevada mountains once more, they would rise with it, ready to face whatever time they had left together with the same courage and devotion that had carried them through 50 years of marriage. Because love, true love, was indeed worth any weight, any challenge, any sacrifice. And the love between Olivia and Quinton Fletcher had proven itself worthy time and again, forged in honesty, strengthened by partnership, and perfected by the simple, steady passage of days spent side by side. Their story, which had begun with a lie about age and a leap of faith, had become a testament to the power of truth and the enduring nature of real love. And as they aged together in the home they had built and the land they had nurtured, they remained what they had always been to each other: partners, lovers, best friends, and proof that sometimes the greatest loves begin with the smallest acts of courage and the willingness to see past surface details to the person beneath. The ranch would continue long after them, passed down through generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story. But the foundation would always be the same: the love between a cowboy and his mail-order bride, a love that had overcome lies and fears, and the simple passage of time to become something eternal. And on warm summer evenings for years to come, when the family gathered on that same porch to watch the sun set over the mountains, someone would always tell the story of how it all began. Of a woman brave enough to travel west on a lie, and a man wise enough to see the truth. Of a confession given in fear and received with grace. And of 4 simple words that had changed everything: you were worth the wait either way. Those words had become the bedrock of their marriage, repeated and remembered through good times and bad. A reminder that true love sees past imperfections, to embrace the flawed, beautiful reality of another human being. And in a world that often valued youth and perfection, Olivia and Quinton had proven that real love had no age limit, no expiration date, no conditions beyond mutual respect and genuine affection. Their love story was not one of dramatic rescues or grand gestures, though it had its share of both. It was instead a story of quiet devotion, of daily choices to love and honor and cherish, of partnership that grew stronger with each passing year. It was a story of two imperfect people who had found in each other exactly what they needed, not what they thought they wanted, but what their souls had been searching for all along. And so, as the years turned into decades and the decades accumulated into a lifetime, Olivia and Quinton Fletcher remained together, their love a beacon for their family and their community. They aged with grace and dignity, supporting each other through the challenges that came with growing old, celebrating each new day as the gift it was. When Quinton finally passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 91, with Olivia holding his hand just as she had held it for over 55 years of marriage, his last words were a whisper of her name and a final declaration of love. And when Olivia followed him just 6 months later, her children and grandchildren gathered around her bed knew that she was ready to go, ready to rejoin the man who had seen past her lies to the truth of her heart. They were buried side by side in the Silver Peak Cemetery, their shared headstone engraved with their names, their dates, and one simple phrase that summed up their entire life together: worth the wait. And though they were gone, their love lived on in the children they had raised, the grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their values forward, and in the ranch that still stood as a testament to what two people could build when they committed to honesty, hard work, and enduring love. The story of the mail-order bride who lied about her age and the cowboy who loved her anyway became a legend in Silver Peak, told and retold with each generation. It became a story about the power of truth, the importance of looking past surface details to see the person beneath, and the beautiful reality that love, real love, transcends age and circumstance, and even the passage of time itself. And on summer evenings, when the sun sets over the Nevada mountains and the air fills with the scent of sage and wildflowers, some say you can still feel their presence on that old porch. Two souls who found each other against all odds and loved each other through every challenge life could throw at them. A reminder that the greatest love stories are not always the ones that begin perfectly, but the ones that endure through truth and commitment and the daily choice to see the best in each other, no matter what.